Star Wars Rebels Season 3, Episode 8, Iron Squadron. I actually like this episode. I didn't really like the Iron Squadron themselves, even though that was clearly the main point of the episode. But I like what it resulted in, because I like getting to see, specifically in Ezra, getting to see him, at least in the beginning. It didn't happen as much as I was hoping, but I still thought it was entertaining to watch those couple of moments where he was like the mature person, where it's like, you can't just go crazy and you can't do this, you can't just run around without a hyperdrive. I like that idea, because he's like the wild card of his team, so they run into the Iron Squadron, which is just basically like just three kids who don't even know what Star Destroyers are, which I thought was a cool little thing throughout the episode. And it's like, hey, we took down the Star Destroyer. It's like, that wasn't a Star Destroyer. It was like, just a little ship, and then a slightly, well, it wasn't slightly bigger. It was a bigger ship. And it's like, finally, a Star Destroyer. It's like, that's not a Star Destroyer either. And, we have this really small team. I thought in the promo, I thought it was like 5 kids, but then in the episode, it was just 3. I was like, oh, I don't know why I thought it was like 5 people. But it's basically just 3 kids, and it's like, they're dealing with the same stuff. They're in like the beginning stages of what Ezra has dealt with, having to leave his home and not having his family and stuff like that. And that I really enjoyed. That was probably my favorite thing about the episode. It was, a little bit here and there, but I think that was my favorite thing, was having this moment. Like, of course, we've seen Ezra grow up in general, but, he doesn't really get to have these moments where he teaches the lessons to someone else. Not in this sort of regard where it's a more emotional thing. Sometimes it might be like in the situation, sort of an action type thing. But rarely is it like a, deeply thought out, developed sort of thing where it's like, hey, you need to think this way and do this exactly. Otherwise, it's going to be chaotic. So I actually really enjoyed that part of the episode. Like I said, the team itself didn't really do much for me. I mean, of course, the main kid was really the point. Like, his friends were basically completely irrelevant. I mean, it was like they were loyal to him, and then, of course, when they're supposed to get on the Ghost and everything, he closes his ship and tries to fight himself. So it's like, alright, I saw that coming. And they're, they're in the episode the whole time, but it's like, they aren't really that relevant. They just feel the same way as him, but they aren't as important because they don't have a connection to Commander Sato and stuff like that. So it's like, alright, they just have the same sort of hive mind sort of mentality. Like, we're not gonna run or anything like that. But it was like, meh. No big deal. They aren't that important. But we have our main kid, who I believe his name is like Matten or something like that. And he is the nephew of Commander Sato, which I thought was cool, because honestly, he shows up a ton in the show, but I never really thought of him as that big of a deal as a character. He's the commander. He tells them, go here or do that, and he shows up and says like, hey, this is happening now. And that's it. Like, he's never seemed important to me, and I was like, that's cool. He has a focus, so that was nice as well. And he was actually on the mission, because it was like, I'm gonna freaking save the only, I'm the only family that he has left, and I would assume vice versa based on that dialogue. So it's like, I'm gonna go save the only family member that I have left, in the universe, basically. And I was like, that's really cool. So that was a nice little moment as well towards the end of the episode, where he decides to go on this mission personally to save the last person in his family that, he truly has. So I love that. I thought it was definitely really cool. And of course, big bad villain Thawne is in this episode, so that was great. Just having him actually appear was really good. And just hearing him be super creepy and talk is like, it's very enjoyable to watch this really creepy character where he's like, oh, this is interesting, the rebels probably wouldn't do this, so what sort of resistance are you going up against? And it's like, alright, so we have the rebels, but there's also this, sort of secondary issue that you guys are dealing with, who aren't affiliated with the rebels, but probably come from the planet and stuff like that. And so he gets that extra information, and it was really cool. And it also seemed like he had a much more personal connection once Sato actually showed up. Like, the first thing Thawne said was like, oh, returning to your home after you left for such a long time. And the first thing I thought was, how the heck did he know that he used to live on this planet? Like, I just thought that was very interesting, unless he was involved in that battle. So when he first said it, it was just like, huh. So it seems like they have a much more personal connection than, well, it didn't even seem like they had any sort of connection. It was just, like I said, Sato was just, he's there, and Thawne is basically in the exact same position, just technically higher because he's a Grand Admiral. So I thought it was interesting. I'm like, okay, they seem to have a much deeper connection than I ever would have thought, considering what little we've ever gotten from Sato. So I actually like that, and it seems like it might lead to something really dramatic. I don't know if they're going to do something where they kill off Commander Sato, but it just seemed like when they had that conversation, it was just pretty interesting to me. Like, huh, this is much deeper than I ever would have thought it would have been with them running into each other. It's just like, oh, you lead this team, I lead my team, and that's really it. But it just got, and also it is Thawne, so maybe even if he met the most random person ever, it could sound super personal just because of how creepy he is. But he knew some extra information, and it just made it seem incredibly personal, like he did have something to do with that. And maybe there's a line in there that I missed, because this is one of those episodes I don't even remember what I was doing. I was doing something else as I was watching it, but I picked up pretty much everything. Not specific lines, of course, but I just like how personal it got. I was like, alright, that was interesting. It made me care a bit more about Sato, of course, him and his nephew, and then, them kind of dealing with having left their home, especially his nephew and his friends, because they just had to do it. But it was really cool. I really enjoyed that, and of course they have a cool mission too. Like he his nephew goes out on his own, and so the team has to go back and rescue him, and it all plays out fairly well. And I don't know if that guy was like a general or if he was a commander, but Thawne sends him out, and of course he loses, and he was scared to go out, on his own anyway. But I like that. I thought it was pretty funny. It was like, oh, he actually lost and he got beat up. And Thawne didn't. Thawne is himself. So outside of that one episode when he like flipped out on that guy, he's super calm and stuff. He didn't seem Superman. It wasn't like a Darth Vader thing where he's like, oh, you lost, and then he chokes you because you lost. So hard to say how upset he is because of how calm he speaks, but it was still interesting. I'm like, okay, this is the first time we've seen him really do that, and send someone out to do like space combat. It wasn't like on the ground where you're in someone else's territory that you took over, like when he was on Hera's home planet. It's not that sort of situation. Like, they know that area. This is just wide open space. It's just ship to ship battle. Like, you're either better or you're worse, and that guy was worse. So I thought it was interesting how that one played out, but definitely a fun episode. Not too much to it, but it was still entertaining. It definitely added a good personal element, because it was definitely a filler episode. Like, nothing really happened, but that's kind of a lot of the episodes. There doesn't seem to be much of a like grand scheme to this season, to be personally honest. At this point, at least, it truly is just like, we're just doing missions to build up the rebels. Like, everything else seemed to be a bit more like direct, like this is what the season is really all about, and that's really the whole series. But I guess because they don't have the Inquisitor coming after them, and they don't have like Darth Vader coming after them, it's just he's here. Thawne is here to stop missions, and they're there to go on missions. So that's really it. There is no that direct threat isn't really there. And I wish Darth Maul would come in some more. That would be awesome. And they just have to keep dealing back and forth between these two really great villains. But still enjoyed this episode. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts. And I actually want to know, because I honestly never even considered this, but what characters, or kind of side characters, do you wish stood out a little bit more? Because there are a couple that I can think of. Of course, our recurring characters. We have Callus, who had a the great episode with Zeb before. I'd love some more info on him. I always talk about, like, whenever they do like the history of the main characters, I never even think about the side characters. Like, we have Commander Sato. Of course, we have our clones, so we kind of know those characters. But I would love to see. I don't know if I want to count them as side characters because of how important they were in the Clone Wars show. But I guess technically they are side characters now. But I would love to know more about Rex during those in between years, like what happened, right after Order 66, and then leading up to him being in this series. I'd love to know that. I think that would actually be really cool. Like how we got to that planet that the clones were on with that old ship and stuff like that. They'll be interesting. They've done little lines here and there, like this is where we fought, or this is what happened here, or this was this ending battle and stuff. But we don't really get to see it. So Rex, of course, is my number one. But I'd actually be curious to see some more Empire-based characters. Maybe even like that female commander that works under Thawne. That would be pretty cool too, because I mentioned, like, I think it was in the first episode, she shows up and she's the one that kind of requests that somebody good be brought in, and he's the one who's brought in. So I'd kind of like more info on both of them. I kind of know Thawne's thing because of the story, but I don't really know her story or anything like that. If she's even in, the original comic books that he's in, I don't really know, or novels or comics or whatever. So I don't know her story, but I'd like to know more about it. I can't really think of any other side characters because there are so few that really recur that often. But those are my few. Like Rex, I would love to see more about. Maybe Commander Sato, considering they got so personal with him in this episode. It seems like they could definitely do some good stuff, like his, the time when he thought his brother was murdered as well as his nephew, and those are the last two family members he had. He thought they were gone, and he didn't know for years that his nephew is actually alive. Like, crazy stuff like that is actually entertaining, but doubt they'll get into it, sadly, just, with the way the show is structured. But we'd love to know what characters, what side characters you guys would like to see more history on. And like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.